Dear Cheri, I recently saw one of your social media posts about a prisoner who's serving a life sentence for marijuana. How is that possible? A life sentence for marijuana? Yep, you read that correctly, and you're not alone in your confusion. The marijuana lifers remain the dirty little secret of the Justice Department. Most people, even a lot of cannabis activists and justice activists, have no idea that they exist. And when they do learn about the fact that the United States federal government actually incarcerates people for life and de facto life sentences for nonviolent marijuana offenses, most people then proceed to jump to some extremely inaccurate conclusions that seem logical, but are simply about as off the mark as you can get. So let's start our discussion of how someone gets a federal life sentence for a nonviolent marijuana offense by getting these common false assumptions out of the way. Priors. A lot of people automatically think that the lifers are a part of the three strikes law and that they must have had some serious prior convictions on the records. Not necessarily so. Many marijuana lifers, such as Craig Cecil, Antonio Bascaro, and John Knock, are in fact first-time offenders with no prior criminal history. Many of the others have prior convictions for marijuana only. The second false assumption people tend to make is that the lifers must have been selling huge amounts of weed to be sent away for life. Again, not necessarily so. Many of the lifers were never caught with any marijuana at all, ghost dope as the prisoners call it, and were hundreds of miles away from where the crime took place. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. How exactly does someone get a life sentence for marijuana? For the nonviolent offenders who are serving life sentences for marijuana, it was a conspiracy charge that caused these egregious, cruel, and unusual punishments. There are two essential things the public does not understand about conspiracy in the eyes of the law, and in this case, what you don't know can definitely hurt you. First, in a conspiracy case, any one person in the case can be held responsible for the actions of everyone in the group, regardless of how much or how little the individual actually had to do with the crime. This is how first-time offender Craig Cecil, who did nothing more than repair the truck that hauled marijuana, earned a life sentence. Now, according to court records, John Knock, who received not one but two federal life sentences, plus 20 years, is responsible for exporting tons of marijuana as part of an international drug smuggling ring. In reality, John Knox's involvement was limited to a minor involvement working in a hydroponic garden over 6 years prior to his arrest. Second thing you need to understand about conspiracy, no actual evidence is needed for a prosecutor to win a conspiracy conviction. The only thing that is needed is the testimony of another person who says you did it. That testimony is almost always supplied by someone else in the conspiracy who's trying to avoid prison time themselves. If you choose to exercise your Sixth Amendment right to a trial instead of taking a deal and you lose, you will be punished far more severely than if you'd just taken the deal in the first place. This is how minor players, like many of the marijuana lifers, end up with long prison sentences, while the kingpins the conspiracy laws were designed to stop get off with little to no prison time. Pretty much all of the lifers got their life sentences by taking it to trial instead of cooperating against others, but that didn't stop others from cooperating against them. They also had to deal with overzealous and corrupt prosecutors, judges, and in some cases, even defense attorneys. At every step of the process, the deck was unfairly stacked against them. So, how can a nonviolent offender get a life sentence for marijuana in the United States? It depends on the person and the circumstances. In some cases, you have to organize a criminal enterprise that sells lots of marijuana. In other cases, all it takes is being acquainted with the wrong people and making the mistake of believing in the so-called American system of justice and exercising your right to a trial.